There he is. How are you
Great,
doing
great.
today?
I'm all good. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Good, good. I have a quick question for you. Following up on
Yes,
what
please.
Tundu was saying, and especially on Monday, I noticed you posted a tweet about Ugandan authorities killing people, quote, in the name of enforcing COVID-related restrictions. So this
Sure.
abuse clearly fits a pattern in your country, including the recent assault on Stella Nyanzi, the very unfortunate situation involving Ziggy Wine, which I know hits close to home for you. And as you've told me and many others over the years, we're usually only aware of these high profile cases, but that there's so much more happening beneath the headlines. I'd like you to tell us and our viewers more about this violent trend by Ugandan authorities and what reasons are now being employed by the regime in an attempt to justify these human rights abuses during the pandemic.
Um, yeah, I like to say that freedom comes to those who fight and not to those who cry, because the more you cry is the more your people continue to die. So rise and defend your rights. I love to use the strong words to motivate myself and my friends too.
Bring it
I
on,
thank you,
yeah.
Jeff, for having me. And I indeed stand with the world as they battle the global pandemic of the COVID-19. However, in the context of Uganda, the effects of the coronavirus are even, aggravated by the effects of bad governance and a brutal state that we are under the 35-year-old dictatorship under President Museveni. Now, you talked of Stella Nyanzi. Unfortunately, as we speak now, Stella Nyanzi is still in detention, probably unless it's been released the last 5 minutes, but she's still in detention for protesting against the government using the COVID-19 as a milk cow, as a cash cow. You notice that, owing it to the, the discipline of the people of Uganda, we have not lost a single person of the COVID-19. However, the government has used the pandemic to brutalize people. As we speak right now in Makerere University, the highest institution of learning, a student has been murdered, and the police is blocking and confiscating all the surveillance cameras. Why? Because they don't want the world to see this, and yet we are in a generation where everything is being covered on camera. That being as it said, we continue to persevere on, we continue to resist, and I must say I'm very glad to be on this very first episode of the Resistance Bureau. We continue to resist, just like dictatorships and authoritarian rules have been resisted over the years. Uganda continues to experience, brutalization. I could talk and talk and talk about that all day, but I'm glad that we have a spirit of resistance and we continue to resist all those vices.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And really quickly before we head to Farida and Fadzai, just a quick follow-up. I'd be interested, and I'm sure many of the viewers would be interested to know, you talk about all these actions being taken by the Ugandan authorities. What have these actions been, what sort of impact have these actions had on the people power movement specifically, as well as your plans for the 2021 election? And as we were just talking about with Tundu, as we recently saw in Malawi, opposition unity is often a key to victory. What plans, if any, are underway in Uganda right now to potentially follow this model? And is this something you've been following closely?
Thank you very much. These actions by the government have, of course, affected our speed of progress. For example, just 2 hours ago, the police burst into a meeting that I and my team was having with the professors of Makerere University. Why? Because I'm seen as persona non grata in the country. And what brings about that? Because I'm challenging the president for the same seat next year. That being as it is, the people of Uganda are viewing this in a completely different way. They're all fired up, they're all charged up, and they're looking towards the election. However, I must mention that shamelessly enough, the president invited the Electoral Commission to his house and gave them orders to organize what he calls a scientific election. Now, that means that people are going to go to elections, but he is not going to allow campaigns. He is not going to allow candidates to reach out to people, even though we have been suggesting to have standard operating procedures, because the COVID-19 is here with us to stay, and we must learn how to live with it, but be conscious, encourage people to wear masks, encourage people to practice social distance, encourage people to wash their hands regularly, and other things, but to ensure that people cast their vote with an informed position. You know, he has claimed that people of Uganda should use the internet to campaign, and he has advised all the contestants to use the internet. But remember, this is the same president that put a tax on social media. Why? Because young people were speaking out too much, according to him, on the social media. So he put a tax on social media. Every Ugandan who wants to use Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and any other social media must pay a tax of 200 shillings to access social media, besides buying the data. So you see that we are living in a country where the government is trying as much as possible to stifle the voices, to make sure people do not communicate, to make sure people do not hear from each other. The other week, I was attending a funeral of one Afande Bell, and we had more than 700 mourners. However, activists continue to rot in jail simply because they were, found in their office maybe with 3 or 4 people. And I must remind the world that something like 2 months ago, a honorable member of parliament called Francis Zake was arrested, tortured, and beaten, and his crime was buying food and packing it in bags and sending it to his vulnerable and hungry voters. Now, that is the challenge that has been that we have been grappling with. However, I must say we resist because we are optimistic of the future. The election is only 6 months away. We have rejected the orders of the government, the orders of the so-called Independent Electoral Commission. Why? Because we know that these are not anchored anywhere in the law. Now, our law provides that in the case of a situation like the COVID pandemic, an election should be extended for a period not exceeding 6 months. But here is the gist. In that extension, a state of emergency is supposed to be declared, and the current president is supposed to relegate power to the Speaker of Parliament. Of course, being the dictator that he is, President Museveni does not give up power to anybody, and that means that he will have to change the constitution, which is in the offing. We've heard that the ruling party wants to illegally extend the rule of President Museveni, which we continue to reject. Now, coming to the election and the possible alliances, yes, for the last 2 years, my team and I have been reaching out to all forces of change. I've had very interesting and very productive conversations with Dr. Kiza Besigye, with General Mugisha Muntu, with Honorable Norbert Mao, and a few other people that have run for president before. We all agree in principle that we need to front one candidate. What we are yet to agree about is whether they are joining us, because all the dynamics point to the fact that Uganda's dynamic being that more than 80% is young people, then a young person will do better. A very well-known household name will do better. And yes, the generation at the end of the day takes it, because this is the first time that a young person falling in this generation is running for president. However, we look forward to a meeting of mind, and we know that when we agree, at least the willing, we could form a coalition of the willing, and we would send the Museveni dictatorship packing.
Thank you so much for that, Bobby. Your energy and your optimism is always so much appreciated. And we thank you for expanding on those topics. Do we still have Fadze on the line, or did we have her drop off? Looks like we may have lost her for a moment. Farida, I'd like to turn it over to you if you have any follow-up questions for Tundu or Bobby here.
Thank you very much, Jeff. We are actually lucky to have two prominent potential presidential candidates here. And it is always a good thing to know that we have people who are willing to put their lives on the line, to fight for others, and to challenge authoritarianism. My question is going to be a follow-up question to Bobiwine. In the case of Uganda, we have seen how the government is deploying so much violence and brutality to not only prevent the Ugandan youth and people in general to express themselves, to not only prevent them to organize, but to also terrorize citizens who dare question their type of governance. How do you believe in the institutions of Uganda guaranteeing the fairness of the election? Do you think that you can stand a chance when so much effort is put into place by a dictator to remain in power? Because we have seen similar cases in other countries like Togo or Cameroon, where we have very passionate young people, young leaders wanting to bring change, and they have succeeded mobilizing millions of people. But the state apparel was still indefeasible. How do you think that the Ugandan institution can be trusted into organizing free and fair elections in the coming months?
Thank you very much. I must assert it that we absolutely have no trust in the Electoral Commission of Uganda and this or any other institution. And here is the reason. President Museveni has over time rendered all institutions of government useless and impotent, for lack of any better word. Why? Because these institutions are filled not with qualified Ugandans, but his cronies and people that feed from his hand. The Electoral Commission, for example, is headed by one Justice Byabakama, and this is the same person in 2011 who was a state prosecutor and pinning Dr. Kizza Besigye, who was running against President Museveni then, who was pinning Dr. Kizza Besigye for rape allegations, which of course turned out to be an absolute lie. Now, these are tight people to the president, who unfortunately is the one that appoints the Electoral Commission. So I must say it right from the onset that we don't have trust in them. However, one might ask, where do we then get our trust from? Our trust, our confidence, and all our power comes from the people of Uganda. And that's why we call our movement People Power, Our Power. Why? Because we know that these institutions are not going to use magic. It is the people that are going to come out and cast their vote and guard it, and then watch it be counted and watch it be declared. Because what we see on the polling station, what comes out of the ballot boxes, is what is going to count. And that is going to be enforced by the people of Uganda. We have seen so many dictators with guns and bombs and missiles, but a people united and standing firmly, of course, in the face and full glare of the international community, we know that ultimately the people of Uganda, just like the people of Sudan, just like the people of Gambia, just like the people of
Malawi,
Burkina Faso, and just like the people of Malawi recently, they have asserted their voices peacefully through a vote, and they have won. I know that many politicians, and especially the government, have been trying to use the media to disempower people and to create a narrative that a mere ballot cannot oust a dictator. President Museveni himself has historically said that a mere paper cannot get him out of office. He has, in the past, referred to himself as a quarter pin of a bicycle, which is forced in and has to be forced out. But we tell him that our generation is a generation that believes in openness. It's a generation that believes in democracy. And indeed, democracy can and will be stronger than any kind of tyranny.
Yeah, very happy to see you having so much confidence in the process and believe so strongly in the young people of Uganda. I'm going to have a follow-up question for you in regards to that, but I want to speak to Tundu at this point. I pass over to you, Jed. I want to go back to Bobiwine because I have this very question that is urging me. The case of Uganda is pretty similar for the case with the case of Togo. Togo has been ruled by the same family for 53 years, and we have had countless elections, and the elections happen the same way. The government deploys militaries all over the country. They have a full control of the electoral commission. The basically stuff ballots on election day. They even go as far as removing opposition members from the electoral commission from the electoral commission headquarters and lock themselves in and give results. So in the case of Togo, for example, a lot of people have even lost faith in the electoral process because they don't see how they can win when the other side is coming heavily guarded with guns and when the whole system is flawed. Now, you told me that you count on the young people of Uganda, on the people of Uganda to mobilize and defend and guard their vote. And you get examples of countries like Burkina Faso and Sudan, where the people were able to resist and defeat the dictators. But in those cases, the people resisted and defeated the dictators, not through elections, but through citizens' uprisings and sustained resistance and a revolution. So my question to you is, if your bid for the election fails in terms of Uganda, Museveni succeeding at proclaiming himself the winner of the elections, are you able and capable to mobilize the young people of Uganda behind you to reclaim their power through a revolution? Are you willing to do that? And do you see the possibility of that happening?
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to agree with you that yes, dictators behave that same way. When you read the book, the Dictator's Handbook, but also
Hello.
studying, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I was saying that it is clear that all dictators—
I can hear you now, yes.
Yeah, I was trying to say that all dictators, particularly here in Africa, and indeed all over the world, seem to be reading from the same playbook. However, even that can be studied and defeated. It all needs three things. One is to organize. Number two is to organize. And number three is also to organize. What do I mean this way? I just want to start to explain it by giving examples. When I said I was running for member of parliament and indeed was speaking truth to the regime in Uganda, 5 billion Ugandan shillings, and that's slightly above $1.5 million, was invested by the government in my constituency, buying off young men and women, telling them not to vote for me. But all we had to do is mobilize the people, sensitize them, then organize. And yes, we did that. It has been said that for a dictator, it does not have to be a unanimous decision. It has to be a knockout. So yes, we massively won President Museveni in the Chadondo East by-election. We sampled the same thing in 4 other constituencies, namely in Jinja by-election, in Rukunjiri by-election, in Bujiri by-election, and yes, in Arua by-election, where I was almost assassinated. And it worked. When we realized that when we mobilize people massively, they'll come out massively to vote, and yes, they will stand and guard their vote. We managed to win President Museveni in all these 4, in fact 5 very decisive parliamentary elections. And we agreed that if we multiply that effort in the more than 400 constituencies, if we say times 400 in different other constituencies, we indeed can be able to sweep the dictatorship off its feet. That explains why we have spent the last 2 solid years as sending out our message, and not only telling people that they can free themselves, but showing them how. And that explains the confidence that I have going into the polls. It goes further to explain why President Museveni is trying to do everything within his powers to either cancel the election or to play around with it. That's why he wants a so-called scientific campaign, so that he can have a scientific election and, yes, come out with scientific declarations. We know that dictators don't always declare the true results. But if this is happening in the eyes of the Ugandans, right from casting their ballot to counting it, President Museveni and his cronies will have no option. We know that he has always tried to use violence. We know that he has always intimidated the Electoral Commission, but he has never come face to face with an entire generation. And that is what is happening in Uganda today. I've said it before and I'll say it again, that this is a revolution. A revolution has already started. It started a while ago and is still ongoing. So yes, the people of Uganda will rise up if President Museveni tries to disrespect their voice. The people of Uganda will rise up and they will send him packing, like they did to his friend Omar el-Bashir in our neighboring country, Sudan.
Thank you so much, Bobby and Tundu. I have so many questions for you, but we wanted to reserve this time.
Thank you so much, Bobiwine.
Yeah. We wanted to reserve this time for questions from our audience. So what we're going to do right now for the next few minutes is kick it over to our colleagues, Dr. Cheeseman and Mentate.
Okay, we understand. So the first one was really about, a lot of opposition parties get strength in urban areas, but find it sometimes harder to penetrate into the rural areas, partly because the ruling party often uses underhand strategies, control of traditional leaders, censorship, use of patronage to try and lock down rural areas. So the first question was about how, parties that have a strong base in urban areas, but not necessarily in rural areas, can convert that support and become nationwide parties. And then Mantade can come in with the second question that we got from our viewers.
Thank you so much. So yeah, the second question was actually trying to look at, it was coming from Malene, France, which was trying to ask, like, the approach that you're trying to use, or the people that you're trying to sort of like reinstate the confidence in the electoral process. The question has been about, is there really a sort of urgency among those people, or there's a resignation of some sort? And then there was also a question around, what are the strengths that you have as a movement that could work to boost the confidence of those people that sit on the fence and could potentially be your supporters?
Thank you very much. For starters, I want to say I agree with you. The government in Uganda is doing what all dictators do. When you're explaining, made me feel like you live in Uganda. Unfortunately for us, it's beyond the underhand of the government. They also use the overhand as well, because the impunity in Uganda is not hidden anymore. They profile us and not only block us from traveling, but President Museveni has used what in the past and even currently what he uses, the Public Order Management Act, which prohibits any meeting of more than 5 people. They have also deliberately intimidated TV and radio stations. And just yesterday, the Minister of ICT came out to warn radio stations against hosting me, just after saying that we shall only be communicating to people through TV and radio, thereby effectively saying that I'm not supposed to communicate to any Ugandan, even if I am going to be running for president in the country. However, I am confident to inform you and the world that President Museveni is meeting a competitor like never before. He has never met any candidate like myself. Why? Because besides Uganda being a predominantly young population, and I falling in those lines, not only in the rural urban area, not only in the urban areas, but in the rural areas too. Uganda is predominantly young, and these people connect with all of us. But not only that is our confidence source. Here is the biggest confidence source. I am an artist and I've been performing for close to the last 20 years. So I am a household name. I am in everybody's living room, including President Museveni. My name has been communicated, and it's not only music for entertainment that I've been singing, but I've been singing edutainment. I've been talking about the same things that I'm going to be presenting in my manifesto. So we are confident that the candidate that my team is presenting is a candidate that is just going to sweep over, and that is one major source of our confidence. I was also asked whether, no, I was asked about what we can do to instill confidence in the people. I must say that our people are confident already, but the confidence is just increasing. Why? It has been evident from wherever we go that we have mass support. So the population is actually working out to inspire others. And indeed, it has been our campaign, each one, teach one, each one, reach one. And we have been succeeding, we continue to succeed. So our people have done it in the past. Like I explained much earlier, they've done it in the past by-elections, and it's the same style, the same fashion that we are going to use to sweep the entire election.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to be able to get a couple of quick questions in if we have quick responses and wrap up on time. So let's press ahead. Another one for me is, one of the things that we often debate is the role that the international community should play in these processes. And some people argue that they should get involved because tacitly they're actually helping some of these governments to survive by aid programs and other things. Other people say they should basically back off because these are domestic processes, and if the international community gets involved, it looks like the pressure for change is coming from outside when it's really coming from below, from the people. So I'd love to get your perspectives as, the next generation of leaders in Africa. What's your perspective on what the international community should be doing in your particular cases? And then we'll take one more question from those that have been sent in, and we'll let our panel wrap up. Mentade, over to you.
All right, thank you. So I think this question kind of tallies with the one you just gave. So it's Joseph Nderita from Kenya. So the question is, we don't see the African Union speaking against injustices in Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, and across other African countries. The question is this union still relevant?
Should I take the lead?
Please do.
We should hold everybody to account for on the basis of these human rights norms that I have referred to.
Thank you very much. And over to you, Bobby.
Thank you very much. And I thank Tundu for the solid communication to the international community. Well, I was more or less well represented, but to put it in more clear terms, I would ask the international community, stop sponsoring our oppression. We have said it before and we continue to see it again. It comes out on the news when a dictatorship has illegally killed people and they're not held accountable. And the next news you're seeing is millions of dollars coming from the donor community. Please hold our leaders, and in particular, hold General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni responsible. Hold him accountable. Make the rule of law and human rights observation a precondition for cooperation. Stop sponsoring our oppression. Just in this COVID situation, you notice that Uganda has received loans way up to 6 trillion. 6 trillion Uganda shillings is more than $1.5 billion. All this money is going to be paid by us young people, our children, and their children's children. But why must we be paying for our own oppression? So kindly look at the morality, look at the values that we share as a human race, and ask our leaders why they do not observe them. To the international media, we thank you so much. And we request you to keep your eyes on us, keep your eyes on the oppressed people. Further, on the international community, we know that President Museveni has presented himself as the anchor of stability, especially in the Great Lakes region. That is a hoax. That is a lie. He has presented himself as a leader that welcomes refugees. But have you taken time to study where the circumstances that cause that refugee influx into Uganda and what causes those instabilities, the wars in Central African Republic, in the Congo, in Sudan, and others? Please investigate that. Otherwise, you will continue to come off as partners in crime with a dictatorship that is killing people and abusing human rights in Uganda. And yet, we look at you, especially the developed world, as the custodians of human rights and the rule of law. About the African Union and the East African community and all the regional cooperation bodies, we also call upon you, man. You know, don't misrepresent Africa. Let the African Union and the East African community, don't let them look like a club of dictators. Let it be the police of values in Africa. Africa and Africans have suffered so much. So our generation in 2020 should not continue to suffer at the hands of our leaders. We are not a third world continent. We only have third world leaders. And it's you, our leaders, that are going to paint a picture of Africa. I was talking to some friend and I was getting embarrassed, asking them what the problem of Africa is. And he was saying, problem number one is leadership. Problem number two is leadership. And problem number three is leadership. So offer us the kind of leadership that we can be proud of, the kind of leadership that you want other younger Africans to learn from. With that, we are going to enjoy Africa because Africa deserves better. Africa is rich, but the Africans are suffering. That should not be the case. This message goes out to all of you leaders, but most importantly, the Africans, because the leaders are not going to do the right thing unless if we hold their feet to the fire and demand for accountability. I thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for that response. And just maybe to close from my end, this comes as a question that we can take home, both the listeners as well as the speakers. So Zimbabwean-based diaspora academic and public observer of African politics, Alex Magaisa, is actually trying to reinstate the need for solidarity among opposition parties across the continent. And his question really comes in to say, what are you doing as a party, as a movement, to sort of like create networks that can help in sort of like learning from each other and improving on the kind of politics that you bring to the people so that you can confront these shared challenges, because clearly the challenges that you are highlighting actually cut across the continent. So I think it's something that we can think about as we wrap up the show and go back home.
Absolutely. So thank you, Nick and Matade, for facilitating that amazing interactive session. Thanks so much to our listeners. We ran a bit short on time. This went by very fast. The response has been overwhelming and we are so appreciative. Please do not hesitate to follow up with us via our website and our social media platforms. We are definitely happy to carry on these important conversations there. Farida, over to you for some farewell remarks.
Well, thank you so much to both our listeners and our viewers, and most importantly, our guests, Tundu and Bobiwine. We do really hope to see your passion materialize, and we do really hope to. And we are very happy to have people like you fighting for the continent, and people like you give us faith and strength. And I really, really do hope that each one of you will make great leaders for both Uganda and Tanzania. So to our viewers, thank you for joining the very first episode of the Resistance Bureau. As you have noticed, we didn't have enough time for all your questions, but we can continue the conversation on our social media pages, and we will be very happy to see you in our second episodes in the coming weeks. Thank you very much once again, and thank you to our technical team, and thanks as well to our colleague, Dr. Chisman and Matade.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for having me, guys. Let me also use this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, President Museveni on the notice. Mr. Museveni, you might have forgotten what you said in 1980, but we have not forgotten. You, Museveni, put Obote on notice on the eve of the 1980 election. You said that if Obote rigs the election, you will go to the bush and fight against him. We have come to that point right now, yet again. And we are telling you that you either organize a free and fair election or step down peacefully. I said that again. We are telling you that you either organize a free and fair election or you step down peacefully. But if you continue provoking Ugandans will rise up against you and you will end up in the dustbins of history, like your friend Gaddafi, like your friend Mobutu, and like your friend Omar el-Bashir. So thank you for listening to me, ladies and gentlemen.